What up YouTube? It is Ben with Bearded Spruce back for another DIY project. Today we're actually in my basement where we are making one of the rooms down here into a workout room. We're gonna move some bikes that we have and some other workout equipment, some weights, TV and all that kind of stuff. There are some unfinished walls down here. Used to be just kind of beadboard. Didn't really like that look, so we ripped that off. And we're doing shiplap walls today. And the material we're using is plywood. It is the cheapest and easiest to work with. This is part of our DIY series. If you want to see other DIY projects, check out the link below to check out the rest of my channel. The biggest project we're working on right now, other than the base, is a 1972 Airstream. So check out those videos because it's a pretty fun journey. Today we are going to work on this basement and get this shiplap up. To do that, we're going to need a few tools. One of them I already have set up down here. An air compressor. These are pretty inexpensive and really useful. You can get them on sale right now at Lowe's for about $100. I'll link to that in the description below. It is one of the most versatile tools I have in my shop. I use it probably once a week depending on the project. Anything from using a nail gun like we're going to see today to cleaning up the shop, all the dust off of things. It's just limitless what you can do with an air compressor. Let's hop up into the garage and start cutting the wood to size. All right guys, so welcome to the garage. Here's all the supplies we're gonna need for this project. What you're gonna need is, first and foremost, is a skill saw. This one is super easy to use, super simple. You could use a table saw, but I'm actually gonna rip all 4 pieces that we're gonna work with today all at the same time. So I'm gonna use the skill saw to make sure the cut is straight. I picked up this piece of aluminum. It's a 1.5 inch 16 gauge aluminum and it's pretty stiff. You need something. You could use a 2x4 if you know it's really straight. Any type of straight edge to do this that is 8 foot long. This is about $10 at the hardware store. So if you choose to go this direction, just go ahead and pick one of these up. You also need some clamps to keep it in place. Any clamps will do. These are super awesome. They're really easy to use. You'll need a nail gun, and then the air compressor is already in the basement and set up for me. So let's talk about nail guns really quick. This is an 18 gauge. The higher the number, the smaller the head of the nail is. You could go down to like a 16 gauge, but you're gonna have to fill the holes. Obviously, some nails. These are 18 gauge. Once again, I went for 1 inch. Because I'm actually working with pretty thin material today. Eye, ear, and face protection. You want to make sure that you protect yourself. Please, please invest in a good mask, some good ear protection, and some good safety glass. We'll need a bubble level. It doesn't have to be this large. You could do a smaller one, but the longer it is, the more accurate you're going to have your boards. And then we're actually going to paint our shiplap. This is actually a marshmallow color. Oh, and then the last thing that you need is 2 nickels. These will be spacers for how far apart each shiplap will be. We're actually going to rip our pieces into 7 inches. To do that, we need to mark every 7 inches and then use a straight edge which will be offset 1.5 inches. We have a 48-inch width piece of plywood and we want to make sure that they're about the same size. We're not going for perfection here. We're going for aesthetically similar. Let's go ahead and mark our pieces on both sides and then we'll start cutting. So 7 inches in, and then that's where we want to cut, but we're actually going to go 1.5 inches past that and put a mark. So 8.5 inches, then we're going to go 7 inches from 7 inches, which would be 14, and then 1.5 inches past that, 18.5 inches, another 7 from 14, which is 21 inches, and then we're going to go 1.5 inches from there, and then 21 plus 7 is 28, so then you go 28, 29.5, then you're going to do 28 plus 7, 35, plus 1.5, 35 plus 7. We're actually going to leave the last one for now, and then we'll measure it. But we got to measure the other side and mark this side just the same as we marked the other one. You can make yours whatever width you want, or really height of each piece. But to split up this piece of plywood as even as possible and have the least amount of weight, it's right around 7 inches for each one. So before we plug our saw in, we want to set up the blade to the right depth. You'll notice that I have some particle board on the bottom here, about a 1/2 inch. You could do 3/4 inch if you want a little thicker. This thin plywood is about 5 millimeters thick. You can go thicker if you want, but that's what I chose for this project. It's pretty flimsy, so you need something beneath it to kind of keep it straight and steady as we're ripping. You also notice that I have all 4 pieces stacked up and evenly sandwiched together. So what we need to do is make sure our blade is going to go just below the last piece of plywood. You don't want to go all the way through the particle board, but you want to go through all the other pieces so it does a clean cut. So this side we're going to clamp down right on our mark that we made, which again is 1.5 inches past where we want to actually cut. The reason for that is this space from the blade to the edge of the saw is 1.5 inches. So if we run our straight edge right along this edge, it will rip a perfect 7 inches. As you're cutting, you want to put pressure on this edge, not too much that it starts bending. All right, so now we got our first 4 pieces of shiplap. This is the side, and we do the same thing all over again. So we're gonna move the straight edge and rip the next one. All right, so this is the first wall we're gonna do. Pretty simple wall. It's 53.25 inches wide. We're actually gonna stop where this drywall is coming out. And then I'm gonna cover this up with another piece kind of all the way down as well. So we're gonna do horizontal slots all the way up. And there's 2 different ways to do this. One is just cut all the pieces 53.25 all the way up, but the way I prefer to do it, which is a little bit more work, is kind of stagger the pieces. So maybe the first one is one that goes all the way across. The next one maybe only goes to this stud, and then there's another piece that meets it and goes all the way across. And then the next one hits this stud, and then one that meets. The trick here is we'll cut the first piece, make it super level, and then you have to cut just enough to go halfway on the stud. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you need enough purchase on each piece to be able to nail it to the stud. We're gonna start doing this, and then I'm gonna go up and cut a few pieces on the miter saw to get us started, and we'll go from there. So I'm gonna cut a bunch of them to 53.25. Make sure they're all lined up. The other size that we're gonna cut while we're up here is 37.25. And then let's hop downstairs and we'll explain what we're gonna do next. All right, so we're down in the basement now. We've got the first piece cut exactly where we want it. And one important thing is to never count on the floor being level. Cool thing about this first piece is we're gonna put trim all around. So it doesn't have to be perfectly matching the floor. So the important part is that it is 100% level, not that it is perfectly matched with the floor. So we're actually going to go a little up on the left side. We're going to grab our nail gun and just shoot one in there. Make sure it stays level. Put another one in there. If we keep the spacing the same as we go up, all of them will be nice and level, and we'll throw a trim piece on the bottom to get it all covered up. The pressure on the nail gun for this project is right about 100. Usually that's pretty good with plywood going into 2x4s, but you want to set the pressure. You might want to do a test piece or two to see if the nail's sticking out, then you need to add a little bit more pressure. If not, you're right on. So the next piece we're gonna do, we talked about, is we're gonna meet up right at halfway. And this is where our nickels are gonna come into play. So we're gonna put a nickel on this side, a nickel on that side, and then it'll be perfectly spaced. You don't want a ton of room. I found the nickel is pretty perfect. And we'll just nail this guy into place. This last section, we're going to go cut a piece at 16.5 to fill up the rest. So I'm going to go do that and I'll be right back. So this last one, we take the nickel out of this side. Might have to wiggle it a little bit. Put the nickel under both of those. And it's okay if there's a little gap. You kind of want it to have a little gap, so it gives like the true effect. Second row is done. Next, we're going to cut a piece from here to the middle of this 2x4. It's a 21.5, and then the second one will be 32. So now we did one to this stud and we nail it. And then we're going to repeat this pattern all the way up. So next we got full piece. So the last piece, you have to rip to whatever height, you need. Sliver up here that we're gonna need. I went ahead and used my table saw because that's the easiest tool I have. But you can do the same method that we did for all the other pieces. You just need a shorter, section to cut. So once you cut that to the right height and the right width, pop that in there. It's okay if it's a little snug. Our first wall is complete. It's a pretty simple one. On to the next walls. So here's the next wall. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna start with a full piece. Use the level to make sure it's the right. And then since this is on the end, we're gonna true up this end to make sure that's correct. And then remember not to worry about the floor. We'll worry about that when we do the trim. And up, up. And then we're just gonna work our way up the same way we did before. This wall we'll do a little different. There's a lot more intermediate studs, so we can kind of mix and match. The trick that I found is never have the same one twice. So if you do this one, this stud this time, don't go right above it with the same stud connection. Go to like this one or a full piece. We're gonna grab our nickels and get rolling. So this is the only outlet on this wall. What I'm gonna have to do is translate this space because this next piece is gonna come up past it. So what I did to translate it was I measured from the top of the piece of wood to the bottom of the box, which is 4 inches. And then I held the piece of plywood up, and you can see I just put lines where the box was. You want to go a little wider than the actual box, but basically I measured 4 inches from the bottom. So from here to there is 4 inches, and then from there to there is 4 inches. And then I'm just gonna cut this box out with a... All right, so now it's all cut out. You can see it doesn't have to be 100% perfect. Again, we're covering this up with the cover plate for the outlet. Let's go install it, and then we'll keep on putting up the rest of the wall. So now that I'm past the outlet, which was the only intricate cut, I cut a bunch of pieces. The whole width, of course, we know is 65, and these are 16 on center. So for the next couple pieces at least, until it shifts up here, I cut some to kind of stagger the seam. So let's put those up and we'll keep moving. For this last wall, we have two sides of kind of a closet wall. I'm actually going to start from the top and go down. I found if you start with a wall that's split like this, and not every piece is exactly the same height, when you get up to where you need a piece to meet all the way across, it's tough to perfectly match them. So I'm actually going to start at the top and work down on both sides. And I'm just going to cut, I'm not going to worry about staggering this one on the 2x4s. I'm just going to cut full width for each side because I find it's a little bit tedious to try to get it all matched up. So we'll get rolling on this wall. I'm going to make a bunch of cuts, find one for the top, and get this room done. So you can see in this clip that I am starting to paint. We are rolling and taping and doing some brush work at the very top, but the rest of it we're just using this spray gun to spray the rest of the wall. This is a completely optional step. If you choose to leave it raw, I think it still looks really cool. We just were going for a very sleek kind of simple design. Once you get through this step, you can really see that it looks very similar to shiplap. Let's jump into the finished product so we can see the whole thing. So you can see that we finished all the shiplap and finished painting it. I will have to add a little trim piece in the corner, but that will be pretty simple. And we're starting to put the room back together. This is actually going to be a gym. So we put the mirrors up and are starting to bring some stuff in here, but for the most part it is done and we got everything back up and running. Thanks for joining another DIY project. It was a lot of fun going step by step through this shiplap project. It's super inexpensive for what the end result is. If you want to see more projects that I'm working on, go to my channel, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you're always notified when I release a new video. Please like my videos if you're enjoying them and you're enjoying the content, so YouTube continues to like them as well. We'll see you next time.